Do you ever find that your mind just tends to go crazy? Like you can't control your thoughts whatsoever. You feel like you're just run by your thoughts and your whole life seems to be a constant cycle of negativity and fear and frustration where you're urgently seeking to resolve your problems at all times? Well, the reason for that is because you're not having an easy time controlling your thoughts. You don't have the tools you need in order to actually go about controlling your thoughts and to create the kind of life that you're looking for. So, in this video, I'm going to go into how you can actually start to assert control over your thoughts, how you can start to create the life that you're looking for, and how you can feel like you're a better, healthier person who actually knows how to handle life and get through things without so much stress and anxiety. So the first thing that you need to do in order to control your thoughts is understand what they are, what thoughts are and where they come from, because there are actually multiple locations that your thoughts come from. So thoughts, generally speaking, are kind of like another sense. They're kind of like your sight or your sense of smell or your hearing or your taste or touch, whatever. I actually think that the sixth sense is actually thought. Thought is not generally something that you are creating on your own. It is you receiving information in a way that feels like you're generating it. So thoughts are not you per se, and that's important to know. So thoughts come primarily from outside of us, and you can look at science and see that there's some information and some studies done around this concept where we actually have this idea of a conscious field where we are all in some way connected to the conscious field and we receive information. This is why the same inventions can actually be created on opposite sides of the world without either one knowing about the other one. And then you run into some issues later down the road when someone tries to patent it or whatever, because you've got multiple people trying to create this thing. But this consciousness field is actually something that is scientifically proven by several different people, and it's a fascinating concept. Bruce Lipton is the father of epigenetics, and he actually talks about how our personalities are kind of like radio broadcasts onto our bodies. And I actually think of this very similar to the book series by Orson Scott Card called the Mithermage series, where he describes humans as being essentially a spirit inhabiting a beast. So your body is a separate entity to some extent. It has now evolved to require a spirit in order to survive, but it was not naturally like this before. So if you're somebody who's into like spiritual evolution and whatnot, this could be a fascinating connection between these different ideas that can give you some sense of understanding. But your thoughts are essentially that same radio broadcast or a different radio broadcast that you're tapping into, and that's really important. Now, you can generate thoughts yourself, as you've probably done on multiple occasions, where somebody asks you a question and then you pick the information out of your brain. Now, the question is whether we are going to the conscious field to find specific information or whether we generate it ourselves, and I don't actually have an answer to that. But you can pick specific thoughts and have them come into your brain. And I kind of look at this as utilizing your brain like a computer. And I don't know exactly how that works, but you could kind of think of the right hemisphere, I believe, as the antenna and the left hemisphere as the computer. And they work together to give you internet access. And internet is your conscious field, or is the human conscious field, or the planet's conscious field. I don't know how big this conscious field is. But essentially, you are taking information off of the internet and then using it for your own purposes. So it works very, very similar to how a computer functions. And that's probably why a computer and the internet function the way that they do, because it reflects the human brain, which is a fascinating concept as well. So that's primarily where thoughts come from. They come from the conscious field. Now, whether you are pulling them from the conscious field consciously or whether they're coming to you automatically is hard to say, but generally speaking, you're going to have both going on at any given time. So now that you know where thoughts come from, you can kind of assert more control over them. You can be more conscious about your consciousness. And the best way to do that is to actually disassociate from your thoughts. And this can seem like a kind of weird concept, but the reality is you are not your thoughts. And I actually describe the human creature as three parts. There's the me, the self, and the I. The me refers to your body, this beastly form that we inhabit. The container of our spirit, that is the me. The self is the personality or the radio broadcast that is in the body. And then the I is the observer of both the me and the self. So essentially, you can meditate and you will get a really clear indication of this particular topic if you do it long enough. Because with meditation, you learn to kind of watch your thoughts. And as you watch your thoughts, kind of like watching a TV program or like scrolling through social media, you start to understand that you aren't your thoughts. Those are just things that you have access to, similar to your sight and your sense of smell and your taste and so on. And that's where you start to get this concept a lot more. So I definitely think meditation is helpful. I often describe the best way to meditate as looking at your thoughts like scrolling through social media, where they pop up and you're like, huh, that's interesting. Thank you, brain. That was cool. Or, wow, brain, I'm not sure that was helpful. Like, are you sure that's good information to be sharing with me? And you start kind of talking to your brain or talking to yourself, really, and creating kind of more of an interaction. And when you have this disassociation from your thoughts, you actually have more control over pointing your brain in particular directions. So you can essentially say, hey, brain, today I want you to look for X. And throughout the day, your brain will be pre-programmed to actually do that. So if you're wanting to change your life and say you want to change your belief about people from people are horrible, greedy, selfish individuals to, well, people are actually very helpful, they're social, they want to interact with me, and they're nice and kind and generous. If you point your brain and you say, today I want evidence that people are good and generous and want to help me, your brain will actually look for those kind of interactions. And more than likely, they do already exist in your world right now, because the amount we see in our daily lives is actually very, very small. This is the concept of the gorilla on the basketball court, where you have all these players passing basketballs between each other, and they tell people, hey, count how many times these groups of people pass basketballs. And then what happens is they actually bring a gorilla in across the screen, it beats its chest, and then it walks off the other side. And I don't know anybody who saw the gorilla the first time. You can definitely see it the second time because you know the gorilla's there. But the reality is most of us don't see even the obvious things because we're not programmed to notice them. And we kind of get rid of what's not important. And I can definitely say this is also my experience in life, where I never saw any pregnant women on the planet until I was pregnant. And then they became really, really obvious. And then when I'm not pregnant, I still don't see any pregnant women for the most part. Every now and then I might pick one out, but generally speaking, I don't notice them at all. And now I notice people with children because I have children and they are constantly on my mind. So I notice people with children, and I never noticed that before either. So you likely have some experience with that as well, which indicates that the amount we see about our world is actually very, very minimal compared to what's actually there. So when you set your brain up to notice the things you haven't noticed before, you actually start to change your perspective of what the world is, and you start to create a more functional world within your life, because now you're interacting with a whole different type of person, somebody who also views the world from the perspective you do, because those are the people that are going to be popping up in your vision in the world that you're inhabiting right now. So learning to disassociate from your thoughts and to meditate and to view your thoughts and then point your brain in a particular direction is actually immensely helpful. So that brings us to the third part of this, which is now that you know how to disassociate from your thoughts, you have to pick what you want to become. And this is probably the most important question anybody can ask themselves when it comes to controlling their thoughts, because if you don't have a particular direction, you will atrophy. It's this concept of, if you have a garden and you plant seeds, in all likelihood, you're going to get the fruit of that particular seed. If you plant strawberries, you're going to get strawberries from your plant. But unlike other situations, if you don't plant anything, you don't get nothing. You actually get weeds. You actually end up in a worse situation than you would have been otherwise. So your brain is kind of like this as well. If you don't assert control over your brain, if you don't set your brain up, if you don't actually point your brain in a particular direction, you won't just stay the same. You'll actually start to decline. You will actually become worse. You will become more jaded. You will become more cynical. And this is exactly why we have so many crotchety old people. It's because they didn't actually take control of their mind, and then everything started to deteriorate. They started to see more and more bad things, and that just kind of increased the rate at which that process happened. So now that you know you can control your thoughts and you have the steps to do so, you need to get really specific about who you want to become, because that's what's actually going to guide you to continue to do this work. So personally, I would aim at what's the best that humans can be. And whenever you ask that question, you say, okay, well, I want to be that. I want to be that person. I want to be kind. I want to be generous. I want to be rich. I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. I want to be loved and admired and appreciated and smart. All of these things that we can be, and they always have room for improvement. There's always more that we can become. So when you decide, hey, I'm going to become the best version of myself, what do I want to focus on right now? You have a very definite direction to focus your brain. And when you're able to focus your brain and use it like that computer, it becomes an extremely powerful tool. And if you can start to use your brain rather than your brain using you, you'll be amazed at how quickly your life can turn around. So this is not a woo-woo concept that I know some people talk about. It is actual, really helpful stuff. And if you can actually take this information and start implementing it, it will totally transform your life in an amazing way. So yes, you absolutely can take control of your thoughts, but it is going to require a certain level of effort. So you have to be committed. You have to be willing to put in the work. But it's not as hard as you think. It just requires you to become more aware and more conscious of what's going on in your life. So don't freak out about messing up. That's not really a thing. It's just a process of constantly improving your life. And as somebody who wants to have a better life, I believe you do too. You want to have a better life for yourself. You want to live the best life that you can. You want to reach your dreams. You want to achieve your goals. And the best way to do that is through controlling your thoughts. And now you know how to do just that.